This is the Michael Brian Show. Hi everyone, welcome back to the show, and I am joined with Richard Sparks, who is an author, and he spends a lot of time writing books, and he has a bit of an interesting backstory and how he got started. So Richard, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
So I am curious about how you got started and how you got connected with people like Rowan Atkinson and John Cleese as well. So you've got quite the story.
Well, it all started really, that level started when I was at university. I bumped into my old roommate who was wandering around one day, and I said, hey, what are you up to? And he said, I'm going to audition for a review. You should come along. Because when we were roommates, I used to write silly notes and he found them amusing. He said, you write? Because I did. And so I went along to the audition. And of course, the swine made me audition as if I wanted to be in the show, which I didn't. You had to come into a room and take an apple off an invisible tree and bite into it and discover there's a worm in it, or half a worm or something. Now, if you'd given that to Rowan, he'd still be there doing it. I mean, he could make a mountain out of that, or rather a meal out of it. But for me, who's not an actor, that was not a particularly distinguished result. But they said, you write, Peter's told me that you write, and he said, come along to the first meeting. So I went to the first meeting a few days later. Meanwhile, I wrote, well, the whole show really. I wrote a history of English drama, a funny version, or drama from the Greeks through to modern. And as you can see, there's plenty of different topics available in that. So when we all met, I think Mel Smith was one of them. And there's all meet and greet for 20 minutes. And then the director said, has anyone got any material? And nobody had except me. So I read my stuff for 20 or 30 minutes. And he said, well, that's our show. And then everyone else, of course, jumped in and brought in other ideas and other sketches, which they added to the general skeleton that I'd put up. And so that was our first show. And they decided that I should be in it as well, which is great fun. But, for someone who never had ambitions to be an actor, was never going to be, oh, wow, this is my big break, because, I know my limitations. And also acting is very, very tough life. And you've got to be, if you want to be an actor, it's because you really, 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 really have to be. There's no other way of surviving it.
What was it like as a writer then? So how did you get your initial books out there? What was it like to get started?
Well, the thing is, nobody's going to give you a book deal straight out of university. So, if you write your novel, you're going to have to write it on spec and send it out and get agents and all that sort of stuff, which is a lot harder now than it was when I was starting out, because there are now 5 to 7 million books published a year, where there used to be 500,000, which is tough enough. But because of the boom in self-publishing, anyone can publish their own books. And so the marketplace is very crowded for the consumer's dollar, as it were. And of course, there's much good to be said about self-publishing, but one of the things that people don't do so much is go through the editing process, which is absolutely essential to writing a book, because by the time you've got your first draft and it's acceptable, that you'll want to have a developmental edit with the editor who's going to help you knock it into shape and polish it and get the gold, as we say. Editing is where you get the gold. So what I did was I took any job that I could get at the beginning, which included writing for, well, the student reviews and then amateur reviews at places like the Edinburgh Festival afterwards in my summer holidays. And then I got my first job writing the things that the announcers said between programs on Welsh television in Cardiff and making trailers. So I did that for 2 years and learned quite a lot about technical stuff. And while I was there, a producer gave me some half-hour children's scripts to write, which was very nice of him. So when I got up to London a couple of years later, I had some credits under my belt, regional TV rather than nationwide. But I think you see where I'm going with this. You just take any job you can get. Nowadays, you can work with people on their iPhones. You can make really good quality work without having very expensive infrastructure and 2-inch tape editing machines. So just do whatever you can to get experience, to get your head over the parapet, and meanwhile keep writing your books. I've got, like many writers, I've got several books that were not particularly, well, in my opinion, not good enough, but they were my my practicing where I was learning, sitting in the bottom drawer. And by the time I came around to writing the new rock series, really knew what I was doing.
I'd be curious about what you learn from the books that don't do so well. Are there any golden lessons to be had from books that don't do so well? Because people usually learn more from their mistakes or their things that don't go so well versus the things that do.
Yeah, absolutely. The first couple of books I wrote were pretty good. They were sub Tom Sharp, if you remember him, sort of farcical comedies with a nice sort of black edge, but they were very derivative. Although there was good bits in them, they were not there yet. And then years later, I remember I wrote something that I just stopped halfway down page, I think 285. I just thought, nobody would want to, I mean, I don't even want to write this. It was just, it's completely just not me, not good, not interesting. So I just stopped, put it away, and said, "Well, that didn't work." I mean, it was a year of writing that um, it was just done out of stubbornness, I think, really, because I really wanted to write a book. But that's not a very clear idea, is it? You've really got to want to write this idea. Again, jumping forward to what I'm doing now, when the idea fell out of the sky and hit me on the head, it was just, I have to write this. This is it. At last, this is my big idea. But on the way there, yeah, you learn a lot from the things that aren't particularly good. My wife and I, we couldn't afford a honeymoon when we got married, and about 3 years later, we had some money, so we backpacked. We put on backpacks and went around the Far East to places like Northwest India and Thailand and Papua New Guinea, which we really loved. It was a great adventure. Um, but a few years later, she decided to start publishing, not publishing, collating all her diaries. And hers was so much better than mine. Hers were charming and light and filled with just gracious, and a lot of mine was just complaining. And I thought, I don't want to write like this. This is terrible. It was a real eye opener when you pick up something you wrote 20 years ago, and I just thought, why am I reporting negatively on an amazing place like this, and sort of complaining about the I don't know. It was just really an eye opener. I thought this is not the way to do it. So, which is I want to entertain. My job is to, your job as the reader is to sit back in an armchair and have an armchair ride, and my job is to do all the work for you. It's the way I look at it.
What would you say were some of the little adjustments that you made there? Because it sounds like there's a bit more to it than, I suppose, just write like your partner, write like your wife sort of thing. Was there anything else that you had to go through to make the changes?
Well, that diary was about me and our experiences, and I knew I didn't want to do that. I've written some narrative nonfiction books, two about the poker boom, which were about me and my experiences, but they were quite interesting in that, I interviewed people who ran cheating rings in poker. I got coached by a world champion to get better at the game. So that was a fun uh, exercise. But basically, the aim is always to write fiction. And fiction, you're not writing about yourself in the same way, if you see what I mean, that you are if you're writing a diary. You're writing about the characters who they take over the story. And it is absolutely true that people arrive in the middle of the story and take it over, and you just go with the flow. Your job is to cling on for dear life when they're while they're forging ahead. And the way that it all comes together is, it's part way between a miracle and sheer hard work. It's great. I mean, there's nothing I'd rather do.
What would you say your creative process was like? So you've written quite a lot over the years. I wonder if you have a process, and would you say it's changed over time, and how were the changes looking like?
Yeah, it's bound to have developed over time. For example, you learn how to be edited, which at first feels like being invaded and that someone's telling you that you've got it wrong. You submit the first draft of a script and you think this is great, and then you go and meet the producer and there's, notes all over it, and you've got to sit back and take your notes and go away and deliver. If you don't, you don't get the next gig. I mean, I did that with the series when I was in my mid-20s and did what I was asked and got the whole of the rest of the series to write. So that was very good. Helped pay the wages for a year or two. Uh, but that's something that's not natural to writers. We sit down and we write and we think that that's it and that it's just all about us and what comes out. But you soon learn that, well, we're all on the same side here. and the editors got the producers. They've all got jobs to do, and if you've given them a good start, they're thrilled, and they say, "This is very exciting. How about this? How about that?" Or it could be the opposite. Is we can't have the haystack burning because it's going to be raining that day. Can you rewrite and put it indoors? I mean, that's a simple example of when you have to do a hurried rewrite. And you learn to think on your feet, to be adaptable. And the more experience you get, the more you kind of see the business three-dimensionally. It's not just, as it were, you and a bit of paper. You're seeing through that to the production, to the shot, to the people you're working with, to the actors, and you're presenting them with the best you can do, and then it's over to them to make the work. Chekhov said, "I write one thing, the actors write another thing. Together we make a play." And by that, he doesn't mean that they change his immortal dialogue. It means that they create from the start that he's given them. He's built them a trampoline, and they bounce. So I always tell actors that acting is a creative job. Don't feel that you're just interpreting. You, it's you now.
What's your current process like? Have you got like a checklist that you get? Is it all a bit more intuitive? How is it currently?
Well, the process is that I construct an outline as I go along. There's this debate in the novel writing world about, are you a pantser? Do you just fly by the seat of your pants, or are you a plotter, whereby you, as it were, stand outside the work and plot it from the outside and then complete uh, to that template. I do both. I write and go ahead to see where the story's taking me. At the same time, I have an outline that I'm continually rejiggling. With my books are all 40 chapters long, so there's 2 lines, 3 lines about each chapter saying what happens in it. And sometimes there are several chapters missing at a certain point, and sometimes I always get your ending first. That's the most important thing, is to find out where the story lands, not necessarily the end of the book, but the explanation for it all. Um, Imagine you're writing a whodunit. You've got to figure out who the murderer is long before you write the story. Otherwise, you're in the same boat as the reader. You're just plodding along with them trying to find out what happens. And I don't write whodunits, but you have to know where you're going. So that's a really good tip, is to figure out your ending as soon as you possibly can. You're not going to find an ending in the mix, as they say in the film and TV world. If you go out and shoot and look for an ending in the mix, everyone goes, "Oh my God, this guy doesn't know what he's doing." So, yep, learn how to construct from the inside and from the outside, and also just be prepared to throw stuff away. Well, I mean, one of the great geniuses of English literature of the 20th century was P.G. Wodehouse. He wrote, I heard him the other day talking about it, and it was, I think, he said he loved writing his books, but he didn't particularly like plotting them. And he would plot them, and he'd come up with 450 pages of notes. And look, if 450 pages of notes is good enough for P.G. Wodehouse, it's good enough for the rest of us. And that's intense story structure. Then when he'd got his story sorted out, he'd go away and write his joyous English, his wonderful language. And it looks effortless. And then he'd rewrite the book twice or 3 times, which is why those books come across so perfectly polished. And you think, oh, he must have dashed this off in an afternoon. It's so easy. But no, it's your job as a reader to dash them off in an afternoon and have a lovely time. But he put in an enormous amount of sweat equity into it. And there's been nobody better in the last century.
Sometimes I hear that you can't really force the writing, though. It makes me think of how much is it is almost writing itself, so to speak, and then how much of it is the hard work, the throwing things away, the write 10 pages and maybe keep one. How much of it's hard work and how much of it is almost flowing out of you?
That is an excellent question, because at the moment I finished the 4 books in the series, and I'm on to sequels, spin-offs, the same but different, as it were, because we've got the world and the universe and some of the people, and there's an infinite amount of uh, possibilities available to me, and it's not going as well as the first 4 books for various reasons. And of course, you try and look for those reasons and say, well, You've just got to sit down and write your 500 words a day, which is true. And you have a get out, which is you can throw them away the next day if they're no good. But sometimes you find yourself, you know, I guess you were funneling, not backing into a corner, but funneling down and getting narrower, where a book should be opening up and getting wider. So it seems to me, having got the four books under my belt, which are all, two 180,000 words, um, they're quite a wallow. I like a book you can get lost in, and then you just want to see how it ends and can't wait. So I'm enjoying this so much. I can't wait. Oh no, it mustn't stop. Oh no, it's nearly over. That's what I love when I read other people's books anyway. Um, so sometimes it's an easy and it flows, especially in beginnings. Later, as you do more and more of the same, it can get stickier. All I can say is what Philip Pullman says is just sit down and write your 500 words a day, which is true, and you can throw them away the next day. But sometimes it's easier than others. In book three of my series, New Rock, New Realm, which is published in November, I must have thrown away 200 pages out of the 500 in the manuscript, 400 something, because I just needed to allow myself to go up blind alleys. I didn't know where I was going specifically. I knew how the book was going to end. I knew what it was going to all add up to, but it's quite intricate plotting, which as you read it, as you come across it, you think, well, okay, so there's your answer. I wonder how this works out. And if you trust the reader, you'll sit back and let the writer. So if you trust the writer, you'll let him take you with him, and you'll follow that voice and just know that it's going to turn out all right. And if you don't, you'll drop the book and do something else. So you have to, well, basically keep at it. Otherwise, the book's not going to get written. Nobody else is going to write it for you that way. But sometimes it is um, less. It doesn't flow. You've got to push yourself. You've got to, as it were, almost play games with yourself. You've also got to find the time to do it and the space. And you've got to say, okay, well, look, if this first draft isn't very good, let's go and see where we've got, and then we can fix it and make it better next time. Uh, it's obviously that's less ideal than when it's all flowing beautifully, but unfortunately, as many writers will tell you, that's not always the case. I hope that helps. Nobody's written your work yet for you, so it's going to be different. I don't know what I'm going to write today. Well, I know vaguely, but I don't know the actual words, the sentences, the conversations. So when I get to them, I will see what happens. And nobody's written your book yet, so it's always going to be to some extent an unknown.
It sounds like it's almost like a self-responsibility activity where you've got to take some responsibility for it. You're the only person that can write it, and ultimately, sometimes you just have to sit down and with your pad and a pen or with your laptop and actually sit down and write the words.
Yeah, this is true, and this is why it helps to have deadlines, why it helps to have agents or um, publishers breathing down your neck. I mean, my old mate Douglas Adams, I'm exact contemporary with Douglas. He was at Cambridge doing comedy shows in Edinburgh, and I was at Oxford doing ours at the same time. So we met in Edinburgh, and we ended up having the same agent in London when we were in our 20s. But it's before he wrote Hitchhiker, and he used to, he used to love missing deadlines. So people, one time his publisher had to sort of lock him in a hotel room and say, you're not getting out until you finish the book. And it took him 9 more days to finish what he should have finished a year before, or some figure. I'm just going to make that up. But Douglas was great fun. And God bless him, he's gone far too soon. But having pressure like that on you saying, we need it now, really helps. Because if you've got an established producer saying, come on, mate, we need it. And you feel, well, I'm a relatively new young writer. I've got to justify this person's faith in me. I've got to show them that I'm up to this. And that really puts you, puts your ass in gear, as they say in America, puts a firework under you, and you feel I've got to live up to this. And you have to. And that kind of pressure and fear and deadlines really helps. Um, Otherwise, you just have to self-motivate. This is why they say writers have very neat houses, because they're always wandering around cleaning up instead of writing. Alan Bennett says he could spend 5 minutes taking the fluff out of his tumble dryer rather than sitting down and writing. So it's a game with no specific rules, really. You have to just have to do it the best way that works for you, and good luck to you. And when you come out to the other end, you go, "Phew, that worked, great."
It's funny you bring up deadlines and pressure and things. I wonder, does it get easier to deal with? So I imagine your first couple where you've got to, as you said, justify their faith in you, and then once you bring out five or so, you start to feel like you're somewhat established, but then you've got the pressure of the previous book doing well to then almost justify the next one. How do you handle the pressure? Does it ever go away?
No, I wouldn't want it to. And I can talk about two sides of this. First of all, the script side, which is, decades of learning about that and learning how to get it done, and the book side. Oddly enough, with the books, the first book took 2 months to write. I mean, it's an incredible burst of creativity. I'd never had anything like it. Um, Having said that, there was a great deal of rewriting, working with the editor, polishing. If that first draft had been published, I'd be really annoyed because we made it so much better working with other people, working with the first draft. It's polishing is really important. Uh, the second book took 5 months, the third took a year, the fourth a year and a quarter. And I don't really know what I'm doing with the subsequent books because I'm writing several ideas at once. And that's been a while. I've got until, well, 2026, the second book comes out around November the 1st, 2026. So I'm well ahead of the publishing schedule, excuse me. But when I'm sitting down to write, I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about what am I going to produce today? Where are we with it? Now, with these books, I've sold the film TV rights. So for me to break down the book into a film, which is, as I said, a 480-page book, and to turn that into 121 pages of the script, the rule of thumb is a minute a page. I think it took 4 days because I know the material so intimately, and the film script is just basically highlights of the book and leaves out so much. So when the producer said, "Look, I think we're going the wrong place. This is more of a streaming thing." It was his idea to write the film, and so I just do what I'm told, and then I put it together in 8 1-hour episodes, just in outline, 2 pages per episode of describing what happens so that somebody can read it and see the events, someone who hasn't read the book. And it works out as 8 1-hour episodes that are full of stuff. Again, that was less than a week to write that whole outline because I'm into it with the material. So, and on, but on the other hand, writing the books is because I haven't done it yet. You're plodding your way forwards, and sometimes, actually, in book three, which the one that comes out in November, there was one scene that just hit me. That is amazing. So I couldn't wait to write it. It's a big set piece scene that's action plus a lot of comic action in there, despite it being rather stressful. I couldn't wait to write it, so I did. And then when I got there, like maybe 8, 10 chapters later, that chapter was already written. And I just sort of dovetailed my way into it and did whatever rewriting was needed to fit it, beginning to that. So that was really exciting when you get something I've got to do this. That's the best you could possibly get. Otherwise, you're just having to do it day by day and pace by pace.
Do you find then that it's almost like an adaptation to what the producers want? Like it's their vision, it's their what they would like it to look like, and then you're trying to make what you think it should look like fit into their vision. It's like it's some Venn diagram where it's what you envision, what they envision, and then the result is both, I
What
guess.
we envision it. Yeah, well, very much so. Of course, if they've read the book of anything they're adapting, whether it's Peter Jackson reading The Lord of the Rings or my producer reading mine, they already like it. They like the book and they think this could make great TV or this could make a great film. Of course, with Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson's big challenge was everyone had a different vision in their heads of The Lord of the Rings, having read it. And he did an amazing job bringing it into a visual form that was acceptable to most of us. We thought, that's that's The Lord of the Rings, all right. I mean, my hat off to him. You could see how easy it would be to come up with some design where you think, no, that's not it. That's not right. I mean, a good example would be Ready Player One, the book, which is brilliant, Ernest Cline's book, and they turned it into a Hollywood film that's poor. Even though Spielberg directed it, it's got nothing to do with the book. It misses out all the brilliance of the book, which is, rediscovering 80s culture in 2045 in order to solve a problem then. It's beautifully, beautifully constructed, the book. And the film's just a sort of Hollywood mishmash of exciting things happening that those of us who love the book are looking at it going, no, this doesn't work. So yeah, it's always a challenge adapting something. Peter Jackson got it right. Spielberg and Universal, I think it was, got it wrong, or came up with a disappointing product. To those of us who are fans of, a really, really good piece of speculative fiction. So yeah, you've got your audience out there who will have certain expectations, and you have to do your best to deliver, which basically means being true to yourself. And if you've got a team of producers and actors, obviously, and directors who are more or less all thinking in step, then the result can be, really gratifying.
Do you have the opportunity to speak to the people that are fans of the work so you get their vision as well? Like it seems like it would be a difficult thing to truly know for sure without asking them.
Well, you can't know exactly, truly, but what's interesting about, I come from a script writing background, so 4 decades of that and writing in various different mediums. I'm an unknown writer in the world of science fiction and speculative fiction, fantasy. Well, not now, but I was when it started. And people, naturally would say, who is this guy? What's this book? Blah, blah, blah. So their expectations are sort of ask me to say what it's about. I'm doing interviews with people saying, tell me about the book, tell me about working with Jack Black or Placido Domingo or Rowan Atkinson or whoever they're interested in. So I tell stories from my history, and that helps people get some sense of what I've done. But when I'm being interviewed by people who've read the books, it's night and day different because by then they're enthusiastic, they're fans. Um, and I say that because presumably if someone read the book and didn't like it, he's not going to want me to be on his show or her show. So I haven't had any interviews with people saying, I read your book and it's drivel. Which I think could be quite fun, come to think of it. But so people are into it and they say, well, what happens next? And I like this bit. And I thought, and how about that? And this is great when how the magic works with the rest of the world and the world building and the characters and the light-hearted tone of some of the funny bits compared with the more serious and exhausting parts of the action. I don't do horror in terms of shock. Like what would it be? Grimdark. I think you probably put my work near a cozy fantasy in that it's there's no well, there are battles, but I don't wallow in mutilations and stuff like that because it doesn't appeal to me. Where was I going with this? I can't remember the question now, but I think I answered some of it. Oh yeah, talking to people who've read the book. It's always great because then you've got something in common now. Now you're both, as it were, fans of the. I love the characters. And so you're talking about, yeah, what can happen next? And is this going to happen? And is that? And I say, well, I can't tell you about that because it's in book 4, but
I find it interesting how you use I guess, the fan conversations where you're both enjoying the books, you're both loving the characters. It's almost like a mutual enjoyment at first, but then you're using it to inform the future, in that they will have a picture of what they think will happen next. And then, I mean, do you use that to inform it, or you already wrote it, so to speak,
yeah,
and then you're
well,
just trying to get a gauge on what they're thinking?
isn't that an interesting observation? That is because, yeah, I mean, I'm writing these stories because I love them. And obviously that love gets through to the people who also love them. And so we've got that is a mutuality, is that such a word? we're both in this together. Go, yeah, we love this guy. You know, like Narek and Horn, the two Woodskin scoundrels who turn up at the beginning of book one. They become very important characters in book three and also in four. And they just kept coming back, and I love them. And they're always broke, and they're adventurers, and they're little Woodskin archers out of the forests. They're always up to something, and they just naturally keep returning, and they're part of the team. And the team always splits up and goes in different directions. You can't have all your heroes in a clump wandering about. They've got to go off and do separate things in order to solve all the problems. So characters appear out of nowhere, and that's their story now. And so when you're talking with people who have read the books, they say, "Oh, we're going to see more of so and so," and you go, "Actually, yes, you are."
So, as a bit of a sidestep, Richard, I'm wondering, so if you go back far enough, you spent a lot of time writing plays and writing sketches. The one that's notable is the Schoolmaster, I think, with Rowan Atkinson. I've actually
Yeah,
watched that one multiple times, and
you're right.
I can't actually work out how you managed it. The little twists and turns mid-script almost was quite fascinating. But then why did you turn to books? Was it just a case of I've been doing this for a while now, let's start writing books as like a variety hit, I guess you could say? Or was there more to it?
Well, books was always the aim. As I said, no one's going to give you commission to write books straight out of university. You've got to get there and support yourself while doing it. If possible, support yourself by writing. Um, so there are writing gigs available in TV in the film world where you can get paid. It's an obvious place to go with it. But looking at Rowan, the thing about him was the way that he picked that material up and ran with it. I've actually got the manuscript in the drawer beside me because somebody wanted to see it on a Zoom call the other day. And that's just, I just woke up one morning, started writing a list of silly names, and when it got to the end of it, thought, oh, this is going somewhere. Now it needs a sketch to follow it. So I wrote the sketch and then typed it all up with emendations and new bits and gave it to Rowan that morning in rehearsal for a little show at the Hampstead Theatre, which was not a very good show and didn't get very good reviews. But John Cleese and Martin Lewis, the producer of Secret Policeman's Ball, which didn't even have that title yet, they came to see it. And then a year later, Rowan calls me up and says, John Cleese just rang, and can I be in his new charity show for Amnesty? And I said, yes, of course. So we went down to the theatre to meet John, and Rowan went out on stage and unknown and came off a star. It was just extraordinary. And I'd seen him do it a dozen times at Hampstead, so I knew how it worked with him doing it. And then Pete Townsend of The Who came on with this guitar after that to do Pinball Wizard. And he said, follow that, which was rather sweet. But yeah, I mean, the first time Rowan did it in rehearsal, he filled an empty little theatre with invisible schoolboys. It was just a good fit between material and performer. Uh, and you can say, I mean, when you're a genius like Rowan, you can say, well, he can make the telephone directory funny. And in the case of that sketch, that's pretty much what it is. So when it came to selling the books, my agent sold it to Kasich, a very good small American publisher. And one of the first conversations I had during the process is called the developmental edit, where you and the editor, you get the editor's notes and you deliver on them. You work together to tighten and improve and polish and explore the book and find more in it. And I said to her right at the beginning, her name's Leslie Robin. She's very well respected in the science fiction and fantasy community as an editor. And I said, it's so nice to be in telling a story, not showing it. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, I've been working show business, you could call it, for 40 years. And here I am now doing telling a story. And she said, look, all right, go to page 191 or something. So we're on a Zoom. When I go to page 191, she says, look, this is a great scene. Don't tell me, show me. And I go, oh, I get it. Which is that so don't just narrate the scene, don't report it like a reporter, bring it alive, make it happen in front of me. So I was completely wrong that writing books is tell business and writing scripts is show business. In a book, you're showing it. You're showing the story coming alive and you're bringing it to life in front of the reader. You're not just narrating it and as I said, reporting on what happened, you're making it immediate. Brilliant note. You never need to give me that note again. So that was something that I learned right off the bat. And obviously the experience of writing scripts was very helpful, but it's not as different as I thought. You are narrating it. It's just you and the reader, or you and the listener in case of the audiobooks, which I also do myself, as opposed to working with a crew and directors and actors and so on. So it's a little bit more immediate, and there is a narrator's voice in there, but it's still, you're showing it, you're bringing it alive.
And one of your latest book series is that you have is the New Rock series, and I'm curious as to what's the story behind that.
Well, the New Rock series, there are four of them as I've written so far. The first one, New Rock, New Role, ROLE. It came out of my love of role-playing games because I was playing, I think it was Elder Scrolls Online, galloping around, getting up to mischief with 24 people, all over the world in our group, all chatting away, because this is a player versus player game. And we're all our various avatars, warriors and assassins and mages. Uh, and then we're in a group and we're going off somewhere to ambush a group of the enemy. And I just suddenly thought, what would it really be like to be this guy, to be this heroic young battle mage with a magic staff and a quest for real, not in a game, but for real. And there was only one way to find out. So the basic premise is that there are three people, one of whom is a retired schoolmaster, so a bit like me, and my dad, who was a schoolmaster. And he's living all alone by himself, and he loves playing computer games, discovers he's pretty good at it. He's the battle mage, the magician, the healer, and his two mates. One is an Australian player who's an orc, and the other's an Asian American girl who's what we call DPS, damage per second. She's a dual wielding sword dancer. Excuse me, and the three of them win the World Championship of Sword and Sorcery. And the next thing, online with millions of people watching, and the next thing he knows, he's being whisked off into another world, and there he is, his own avatar for real. And where are the other two? And he's got crappy noob level gear, and he's being hunted by wolves. So things get worse, Basically, it's from heroes to zeros. Having just won the world championship, he's starting out at the beginning because, of course, he's never used a sword in real life, and he doesn't have a magic staff. He doesn't even know if there is magic in that world. So he's got everything gets worse. He gets dragged off and sold into the army, where, of course, he trains and gets good. And eventually, the quests unfold themselves, and he discovers there is indeed magic in that world. He's just got to figure out how to get his hands on some of it. And one story leads to another. There's an enormous problem that they have to solve in that world in order to, well, basically save it. And then when that is over, the explanation at the end of the book tells you why this all happened and what the stakes are and what needs to be done next. So then you're off to the races for the following books in the four-part series. So it was a ride and a half. I just am so grateful to have been able to have something like that hit me.
In the third book, is there anything that those that are wanting to read this one would expect? Is there anything that stands out?
Yep, a lot of our people that they've met before come back in again. In the second book, our group of heroes have to go off to another land, new realm. It's called New Rock, New Realm. So they have to go off to that and off in different directions in order to solve the problem that has presented itself to them. And in the third book, they're back where they started more or less in the land that is now their home. And that leads again off in different directions, but some of the characters they met before reappear. And in chapter 9 of the 40, you're given the answer. It's the most intricately constructed of the four books. There's a moment where a mystic poem is revealed in a meeting where they're wondering what the hell to do about the problem that's facing them. And one of them, who's a seer by nature, she starts talking. She's been told by some mysterious force, and she relates these little simple lines of verse, things like run and hide and run is how it starts. I think 16 lines of simple three syllables or four syllables. And when she's finished talking, the other Marnie, who you may remember from the first book, who's an old wise woman, says, well, there's your answer. you've been told. And our hero's going, well, but what does any of it mean? She says, well, I don't know. It's up to you to find out. But you don't get told by a seer unless that's your answer. Go figure it out. So for the next 30 chapters, those lines baffle and slowly reveal themselves as our hero works out bit by bit by bit what they might mean, what they could mean, and eventually what they do mean in order to solve not just the problem that he's got at that stage, but the problem that reveals itself a couple of chapters after that scene. So they've got two massive problems to solve, and they've been told the answer, and they can't make head or tail of it. So they have to go off and try and figure it out to where the hints seem to be leading them, and then circle back to the climax. And that was fun coming up with all that construction. So that's the one that comes out this year, and the fourth one is well. Anyway, we'll get onto that later. Again, you keep it's the same but different. Anyone who likes these books is going to want more of the same, but they want it to be different enough so they don't feel that, oh, I've read this already. If I did anything that was too far away, different from what had come before, they'd be annoyed. They'd say, no, that's not right. That's not what I signed up for. So you've got to keep refreshing the wheel, as it were. No, not refreshing the wheel. No, it's reinventing the wheel.
Before we give those that listening chance to grab the books, I wonder, do you have any advice for writers that are wanting to get involved with books? Maybe they've written a few things in the past, but they want to fully commit to writing their books, whether it's a series or individual book. What would be your best piece of advice and words of wisdom for the people that are wanting to get involved?
Well, what I've learned coming out of the script editing business is that writing a book, you're working by yourself much more. So I would suggest the following, which is going to conventions, whichever country you're in. In Britain, there's what's it called? The British Fantasy Society, run by David Green, great bunch of people, and they have a convention every year. This year in November, there's the World Fantasy Convention in Brighton, which is where we're having the launch party for which one is it? New Rock, New Rules, Book 3. And that is the World Fantasy Conference, which is usually in America, but this year it's in Brighton in England, as I said, and it's joining up with the British Fantasy Society. So that'll be a big event. Come to that. Come to panels, sit in at panels, meet people, talk to people. Here's an example of what could happen. I was at Seattle last year, not this year, and a young man came over and chatted to me. I was at my my publisher's had a desk of all his books, a big display table, and he came over and he chatted with his girlfriend. So we were just chatting about something, and he said he was a young writer and what did he want to do? And I said, "Oh, get that guy over." So we called someone over who's the head of, oh my God, what they call Jabberwocky, which is a very big literary agent for fantasy and science fiction writers. He's Brandon Sanderson's agent, and Sanderson has sold millions of books and he's a big name in the business. So I called him over. I'd met him. He knew my publisher and introduced him to this young man who's never published anything. And he couldn't have been more gracious. He said, "Great, well, please send me the book. I'd love to hear about it." That's good. Do keep in touch. That's a connection made between an ambitious young writer who's, delightful guy and he's full of ideas, and an established top of the profession agent in the world. So that would never have happened to him if he hadn't come to that convention. So I would suggest, yes, you're by yourself when you're writing books, but get out and meet people. And also there are things like the Writers Guild of Great Britain. There are also many, many groups on the internet for writers, for lovers of fantasy. Also, fan fiction is a good place to start. It was something that I didn't really understand when it started, but people writing characters that they love that have been created by other writers and sending them off on new stories because they know that character. That's a good way to start writing because you know who that person is. You've read the books with them in it. That person is part of you now, so you can write for fan fiction and just basically learn the craft. But getting out and meeting people and selling yourself, it's something that most of us who are writers find quite difficult because we're We tend to be more solitary. And there are some writers who are really good at pushing themselves around and meeting people, and others who are hopeless at it. But it's something that you need to try, because if you make those connections, then something might happen. And also you get feedback, which is useful.
For those that are listening that would like to learn more about you, Richard, and possibly even grab the books, how can they do that? So share websites and social media, that sort of thing.
The easiest place to get started is to go to richardsparks.com. There's no E in Sparks. And on that website, my website, you can read about me, you can read reviews, you can read the blogs, which I do about, Douglas Adams or Rowan or whoever people have asked me to write about. And you can also get free chapters. You can get a free audio chapter or a free physical downloadable chapter of each book. So at the moment, there are 4 chapters up there, 2 audio chapters, one from New Rock, New Roll, one from New Rock, New Realm, and 2 written chapters, one again from New Roll and one from New Realm. So there's a chance for you to sample the material, see if you like the tone, see if you like the feel of it. And if you do, then come on in, the water's fine. But at least you can get to browse the book at your leisure. So that would be the best place to start, I would think.
Thanks so much for being a guest on the show. Those that are listening, feel free to subscribe, share the show, tell others, and also leave a review wherever you are listening into your podcasts. Richard, thanks so much. It's been great to have you on, and I look forward to keeping in touch. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Michael.